What drives average individuals to engage in horrific acts of brutality? How do whole communities descend into patterns of conflict and devastation? These are not theoretical inquiries. History has repeatedly demonstrated that, under certain conditions, even the most typical person can be caught up in a surge of aggression or suppression. The unsettling truth is that this change doesn't occur suddenly, nor is it confined to the past. The same influences that have resulted in atrocities throughout history are still active today, molding our thoughts, behaviors, and interactions with others. It's crucial to understand that these influences are not always overt. They often operate subtly, shaping our perceptions and biases over time. Think of it as a slow drip of poison, gradually eroding our capacity for empathy and critical thought. This makes it all the more important to be vigilant and aware of the potential for these forces to take hold in our own lives and communities. Consider the power of suggestion, the influence of social norms, and the allure of belonging to a group. All of these can play a role in shaping our behavior, sometimes in ways we don't even realize. One of the most terrifying instances of this occurrence is the 1994 Rwandan genocide. In just 100 days, nearly 800,000 individuals were slaughtered, not by an invading force or a dictatorial government, but by their own neighbors, colleagues, and even friends. How does an entire populace turn against itself in such a brief period? The answer lies in the influence of propaganda, which methodically dehumanized the victims, portraying them as pests or foes of the state. By depriving people of their humanity, those perpetrating the killings could justify their actions without remorse. This process did not happen abruptly. It was the outcome of years of intentional conditioning that shaped how people perceived each other. The radio became a weapon, spewing hate-filled rhetoric that painted the Tutsi population as subhuman. Newspapers published inflammatory articles, stoking fear and resentment. Even religious leaders were complicit, using their pulpits to spread messages of division and hatred. This relentless barrage of propaganda created a climate of fear and suspicion, making it easier for ordinary people to participate in acts of unspeakable violence. The speed and scale of the genocide were shocking, but the underlying causes were deeply rooted in a history of ethnic tension and political manipulation. Psychological studies reveal just how vulnerable humans are to these perilous dynamics. The Stanford prison experiment conducted in 1971 showed that in just a few days, ordinary individuals assigned the role of prison guards began to mistreat those designated as prisoners. There was no real authority compelling them to act cruelly, only the psychological effects of their assigned roles. This experiment highlights a disturbing truth. The potential for cruelty is not confined to a few monstrous individuals, but exists within all of us, waiting to be activated under the right conditions. The experiment was originally planned to last for 2 weeks, but it had to be shut down after only 6 days due to the alarming behavior of the participants. The guards became increasingly authoritarian and abusive, while the prisoners became withdrawn and depressed. Some of the guards even invented their own rules and punishments, exceeding the boundaries of the experiment. This demonstrated how quickly people can internalize roles and how easily they can succumb to the power of authority, even in the absence of direct orders. The Stanford prison experiment remains a stark reminder of the potential for ordinary people to commit extraordinary acts of cruelty when placed in certain situations. The forces that led to historical atrocities are not confined to history books. They manifest in the modern world as well. Social media has become a breeding ground for manufactured outrage and tribalistic thinking. Political opponents are no longer seen as people with differing perspectives, but as existential threats. Online mobs engage in harassment, doxing, and cancel culture, believing their actions are justified because their targets are perceived as enemies. Once someone is labeled as an opponent, empathy disappears, and cruelty becomes disturbingly easy. The anonymity afforded by the internet often emboldens people to say and do things they would never do in person. Echo chambers and filter bubbles reinforce existing beliefs, making it harder to encounter diverse perspectives. Algorithms amplify outrage and division, driving engagement at the expense of civil discourse. The constant stream of negative news and inflammatory content can create a sense of perpetual crisis, making it easier to justify extreme actions in the name of defending one's tribe. Social media, while offering many benefits, has also become a powerful tool for spreading misinformation, inciting hatred, and dehumanizing others. The descent into dehumanization does not happen overnight. It begins with subtle shifts in language and perception. It starts when people casually dismiss entire groups as inferior, problematic, or dangerous. History has shown that when this mindset is left unchecked, it can lead to devastating consequences in the real world. But how do we prevent ourselves from falling into this trap? The first step is self-awareness. Recognizing when we are being manipulated into an us versus them mentality is crucial. The moment we begin to see entire groups as the enemy, we must pause and ask, who benefits from this division? Who is profiting from our anger? Questioning these narratives helps us reclaim control over our perceptions and resist falling into the cycle of dehumanization. Pay attention to the language you use and the language used by others. Are certain groups being demonized or stereotyped? Are complex issues being oversimplified? Are emotions being manipulated to incite anger or fear? By becoming more aware of these tactics, we can better resist their influence and promote more nuanced and empathetic ways of thinking. Another essential strategy is to view people as individuals rather than as members of a monolithic group. No political ideology, religion, or nationality is composed of identical individuals. Each person has their own unique experiences, values, and beliefs. Engaging with real people rather than stereotypes disrupts the mental shortcuts that lead to prejudice and hatred. Propaganda is one of the most powerful tools used to shape public perception, and resisting it requires constant vigilance. Whether it comes from politicians, media outlets, or social circles, narratives that paint certain groups as less than human should always be met with skepticism. Language that portrays people as enemies, threats, or parasites has historically preceded some of the worst atrocities in human history. Recognizing this tactic is the first step in resisting its influence. Seek out opportunities to interact with people from different backgrounds and perspectives. Listen to their stories, understand their challenges, and appreciate their unique contributions. Challenge your own assumptions and biases, and be willing to change your mind when presented with new information. Building bridges of understanding and empathy is essential to breaking down the walls of division and prejudice. But why do people justify their actions even when those actions contradict their moral values? The answer lies in cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort we experience when our actions conflict with our beliefs. Instead of admitting wrongdoing, people often rewrite reality to protect their self-image. This self-justification allows corruption to thrive as individuals convince themselves they are still good, no matter how many moral compromises they make. Consider someone who believes they are an honest person, but is caught lying. They have two choices: acknowledge their wrongdoing, which is uncomfortable, or justify the lie by rationalizing that it wasn't a big deal or that they had no other choice. Most people choose justification, and over time, this pattern erodes their moral compass. This is why corrupt politicians, war criminals, and everyday individuals rarely admit fault. They have convinced themselves that they are still righteous. This is further compounded by the fact that admitting fault can have significant consequences, both personally and professionally. It can damage one's reputation, lead to legal repercussions, and even result in social ostracism. Therefore, the pressure to self-justify can be immense, making it even more difficult to confront one's own wrongdoing. The most dangerous justification is the belief that one is acting for a greater purpose. Some of the worst atrocities in history were committed in the name of justice. Religious wars, political purges, censorship, and oppression have all been rationalized as necessary to protect a cause or defend a belief system. When people become convinced that their ideology is morally superior, they stop questioning their own actions and become capable of extreme cruelty. Once self-justification begins, it doesn't stop. The further someone goes down this path, the easier it becomes to justify increasingly harmful actions. Some of history's most horrific crimes were committed by individuals who truly believed they were doing the right thing. This is the danger of unchecked moral licensing. When people believe they are inherently good, they give themselves permission to do harm. This is often seen in cases of political extremism, where individuals believe that their cause is so important that any means are justified to achieve it. They may engage in violence, intimidation, or even terrorism, all in the name of advancing their ideology. The belief in a greater purpose can be a powerful motivator, but it can also be a dangerous justification for unethical and harmful behavior. The final and most dangerous stage in this descent is full-scale dehumanization. When a person or group is no longer seen as human, any atrocity becomes justifiable. The mind has a loophole. It instinctively suppresses empathy when it views someone as less than human. This psychological trick has been used throughout history to enable war, slavery, and genocide. Before the Rwandan genocide, radio broadcasts referred to the Tutsi people as cockroaches. Before the Holocaust, Nazis compared Jewish people to rats. During American slavery, black people were legally classified as property rather than human beings. The pattern is always the same. Language strips people of their humanity, making it easier to justify harming them. This process is not a relic of the past. It is happening today in modern conflicts, in political rhetoric, and in the way people attack each other online. Look at the way refugees and immigrants are often portrayed in the media, as burdens on society or threats to national security. Consider the language used to describe political opponents as enemies of the state or traitors to the country. These are all examples of dehumanization in action, and they should serve as a warning of the potential for violence and oppression. The only way to fight this cycle is through radical self-awareness. The moment you think, "I would never do something like that," you are already at risk. The most dangerous belief is the assumption that you are immune. The key to resisting these forces is questioning your own biases, choices, and justifications every single day. Ask yourself, am I making excuses for behavior I would condemn in others? Am I blindly following authority without questioning its morality? Am I labeling an entire group as the enemy? Every time you feel the need to justify an unethical act, stop and reconsider. Moral courage is essential. The world does not just need good people. It needs people who are willing to act when it matters most. If something feels wrong, speak up. History's darkest moments happened not just because of those who committed evil, but because of those who remained silent. This requires a willingness to challenge the status quo, to stand up to injustice, and to risk social disapproval. It also requires a commitment to empathy, to understanding the perspectives of others, and to treating all people with dignity and respect. Moral courage is not easy, but it is essential to creating a more just and humane world. The reality is that the capacity for darkness exists in all of us. It is not an anomaly or a rare human defect. It is wired into the way we think. But that also means it can be fought by choosing empathy over division, questioning propaganda, and holding ourselves accountable. We can resist the psychological traps that have led so many societies to destruction. Now that you know this, what will you do differently? Understanding the psychological mechanisms is not just an academic exercise. It is a call to action. Every moment of history that descended into darkness did so because ordinary people either embraced harmful ideologies or failed to resist them. The lesson is clear. No one is exempt from these influences, and vigilance is required to ensure we do not unknowingly contribute to cycles of dehumanization, moral corruption, or systemic injustice. Consider the power of small acts of kindness and compassion. A simple gesture of empathy can make a world of difference to someone who is feeling marginalized or isolated. Challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and engage with people who are different from you. Speak out against injustice, even when it is unpopular or uncomfortable. By taking these small steps, we can all contribute to creating a more just and compassionate world. One of the most effective ways to counter these dangers is through education and dialogue. Studies in social psychology have shown that exposure to diverse perspectives can reduce prejudice, increase empathy, and prevent the rigid thinking that leads to extremism. When people engage in meaningful conversations with those who hold different beliefs, they are more likely to humanize them, and less likely to be swayed by propaganda. This means that fostering open, critical discussions both in personal relationships and in broader society is essential to breaking the cycle of ideological entrenchment and division. Creating safe spaces for dialogue, where people can share their experiences and perspectives without fear of judgment, is crucial. Encouraging critical thinking skills so that people can evaluate information objectively and resist manipulation is also essential. Education and dialogue are not panaceas, but they are powerful tools for promoting understanding, empathy, and critical thinking. Additionally, history provides us with examples of those who resisted the tide, from individuals who hid Jewish families during the Holocaust to whistleblowers who exposed corruption despite personal risk. History remembers those who had the moral courage to act when others remained silent. Their actions serve as proof that standing up against injustice, no matter how small the effort may seem, can make a difference. It also reminds us that the fight against dehumanization and moral justification is not just about avoiding harm ourselves. It is about actively preventing harm to others. These individuals often faced significant risks, including persecution, imprisonment, and even death. Yet they chose to act according to their conscience, demonstrating the power of moral courage in the face of adversity. Their stories serve as an inspiration to us all, reminding us that we each have a responsibility to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult or dangerous. In the end, the responsibility falls on each of us. Every day, we make choices that shape the kind of world we live in. We can either participate in destructive narratives or challenge them. We can either justify actions that violate our values or hold ourselves accountable. We can either remain silent or choose to speak out when it matters most. What will you choose? If you love this content, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more knowledge. The choices we make, the words we speak, and the actions we take all have an impact on the world around us. We can choose to contribute to a culture of division and hatred, or we can choose to promote understanding, empathy, and respect. We can choose to justify our own wrongdoing, or we can choose to hold ourselves accountable. We can choose to remain silent in the face of injustice, or we can choose to speak out and make a difference. The choice is ours, and it is a choice that we must make every day. The future of our society depends on it. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose to be agents of change, working towards a more just and compassionate world for all.